PNR with Adam R. Welcome to 3PNR. I'm your host, Adam R. Joining me for this episode is John Curley. John, how you doing, sir?
What's going on, Adam?
Another day in paradise, as we talked in pre. Rainy here, nasty, probably on its way to you. But outside that, doing well.
Yeah, it's getting ready to come up our way. So we need the rain there. We haven't had any rain, so all our rivers are pretty low. And if you like fishing, you know, which I do, we need some rain to get those water levels up so we can get out on the river and go fishing.
Yeah, replenish it. Yeah, here in Florida, weird place, man. Like we could have a drought and a flood in the same week. It's crazy.
It's crazy. We haven't had much rain at all up here.
So what's going on in the paranormal world for you now? What's new?
We just went to Fort Mifflin last weekend, Friday night actually.
Oh, you did. You mentioned that. How'd that go?
Really quiet. I mean, it's right by the Philly airport, but we didn't have a whole lot of significant paranormal stuff going on. We had a couple things happen that were interesting. And one of the casemates, I think it was casemate 5, we were in there and we were asking if we could do things and stuff like that. And we heard these, I heard these snapping things, like someone snapped their fingers right next to me. Like, I was like, whoa. I said, any of you guys do that? They're like, no, we heard it. It was right by you. I'm like, yeah, it was like literally right by me. It's just these snapping noises, boop, boop. But I still have a bunch of stuff to go over and hours and hours of audio and video to go over. So
yeah,
who knows? We might have caught something.
So some of the things in the past that you've worked on, what are some of the more compelling things you came across in the past?
Oh, so many things we've experienced through the years. Earlier cases we did, we were aired on Animal Planet's The Haunted, and our show was called The Bloody Man. Don, who founded the Harrisburg Area Paranormal Society with me, he wound up getting the case from one of his clients. He delivers oxygen for patients and stuff, and one of his patients knew our future client and, you know, put us on to her. They said they were having a lot of paranormal things happening, and so Don reached out to her. We started talking back and forth. Said, yeah, they were telling us about all the paranormal experiences of them seeing like smoke in the house, hearing disembodied voices, and came to the point where they finally had seen a full-bodied apparition in the house, and then that's when they kind of wanted us to come in and investigate. It was a really interesting case. It was one of the cases that kind of came around full circle for us. We came around 360, and usually that doesn't happen. We wound up investigating, and you know, we were talking to the clients, and they were telling us their experiences, and their kids were seeing this man. They described him as he looked like he was bloody, like he was red, and we couldn't understand, like, why is he seeing like a bloody man, you know? So they called him the Bloody Man. The kids did.
It's probably trying to convey a message, a visual message of what happened, right?
Yeah. Well, we kind of like researching the property and stuff, and there was a couple of different owners, but there was one owner that had been there for quite a long time. And well, I'll just tell you how the experiences started with the family. They bought an old house. It was really beat up, and the husband Brad, he started fixing the house. And upon fixing the house, I guess he stirred up the activity because he was tearing down walls, he was refixing stuff. I mean, he was doing a lot of construction in the house, and activity started to happen, but it was only happening to the mother at first. She was hearing like coughing and things like that, and noises, and you know, things were out of place. And you know, husband didn't believe her whatsoever. You know, she's telling him all these things that are going on, and he's like, whatever. You know, I don't believe it. And then he starts to experience phenomena. He was sitting in the living room one day watching TV, and he heard somebody cough, like this raspy cough kind of behind him, and he turned around and there was nobody there. And he's like, what the hell was that? And he just couldn't figure out who the hell would be coughing because nobody smoked in the house, but it sounded like a man with this raspy cough. And it started progressing from there. They said they were sitting in the living room one day and their daughter come running out of the kitchen into the living room. And when she did, there was this mist that was behind her, and it came in between her and them. And it was like this gray, smoky mist. And they were just like, what the hell is that? And like all of a sudden, it just evaporated and it was gone, but they couldn't explain what the hell it was. Huh. And it started manifesting that way into like a mist. And then the wife, Laura, had said she was there one day and she seen feet like walking, like she could see look like a man's boots walking, just the boots. And then it just disappeared. And then from that point on, she started seeing from the boots, it went to the knee. It kind of progressively worked its way up to it. Finally, the husband wound up seeing a full-bodied apparition come up out of the basement. He was working on a refrigerator, and he looks over, and he had the basement door open, and this man comes up out of the basement, puts one footstep onto the dining room floor, and just disappears into who knows.
That's the thing with apparitions. The thing with apparitions is, right, they have to manipulate energy to materialize, right? There's a strong chance they're trying to relive an event, or they're in some, because I was just talking about this just previously with Victoria Osborne about maybe they're stuck in a loop, right? And that particular moment in their life where whatever happened to them, time is not the same wherever they are. Like when they cease to be here, time stops for them, right? Because they're in the between. And so
it's weird.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if that person is just reliving an event over and over again, right? Man, for him, routine is get up, go sit down somewhere, light up a cigar, a cigarette. It's bizarre. Apparitions are bizarre. For me, John, I've witnessed nothing, and I'm going to be getting in the field doing a documentary. That's why I'm building a network. I want to find locations where they're not quote unquote hotspots, so when I'm there, I can witness something and document it. The apparitions, however, those, when you come into one of those, it's one thing to hear things and get certain readings on instruments. It's another thing to visualize something, because then when it's embedded in your mind. Your computer, your brain is trying to process, what is this I just saw? And so for you, the first time you've ever come across an apparition, what was your recovery time for it, or what was your reaction to it?
I was shocked. I was in shock, total shock. It was like, you hear a lot of people say they're going to go after it or they're going to chase it down. And I'm telling you, your first reaction is to just stand there. And mine was, I was just standing there looking at it, like couldn't believe what I was seeing. Right. And I was like, am I imagining what I'm seeing here? Like there's this figure. It wasn't looked like us. It was just black, and it looked like a silhouette. You couldn't see any facial features. You couldn't see any hands. It just looked like almost like a shooting target. It was just there with like smoke coming off of it. It was weird, like a fog coming off of it. It was the weirdest thing I've ever seen in my life. And I was scared actually, because I didn't know. You don't know what these things are capable of doing. I'm a pretty fat guy, so I'm a pretty big guy. I'm not scared of too much, but these things are unknown. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. Can this thing throw me up in the air? I don't know what it can do.
Worst case scenario, my opinion, it follows you home and it just repeats the same shit all day long, nonstop. But that would drive you crazy. You know what I mean? You can't do it. A lot of people ask me, like, what do you do if aliens come? Well, if they have significant, technology, there's not much I can do. But in a physical matter, I could beat one up. I'm pretty sure of it. As far as Bigfoot, I could shoot that. But with a ghost, what do you do? You know what I mean? If he wants to really harass you, there's not much, because I was talking about this with several people. Let's say there's an energy that's here, right? An apparition or a ghost or whatever, and it predates humanity. It predates religion. It doesn't recognize our rituals to remove it. So whatever jargon you're spitting at it is nonsensical to it. Doesn't even care. So that's a concern for me, is that something would harass you or alter your daily life. For me, personally, it would give me confirmation, 100% confirmation that there's something, after this. And I think that would put me at ease, because at the end of the day, the majority of the things I research for this podcast that are, supernatural, it's just me questioning my mortality, right? What is past here? So
all of us are doing the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because if you think about mankind, it's why religion came around. It's why we have deities. It's how we explain things. We need explanation. And even the best of religion there is, at the end of the day, in my opinion, is just theory, mixed with stories. And you know how man is. Like, John, if I tell you right now, hey, I threw a rock at a car, in 4,000 years, it's going to be, I threw a rock at a car and the car exploded. Because that's what people do, We have to alter stories.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know, I definitely think there's something else out there when you die, but I don't know what it is. You know what I mean? Like, is it heaven or is it, I don't know.
Right.
Is it some kind of parallel dimension to what we're on now? Another dimension. Is it aliens? I really don't know. I know there's something else. Like in that house, the things that we experienced was really intelligent. Like, it answered questions to things that only that person would know in the house.
Right.
That lived in that house. And which was really weird was it used to, their animal started reacting to it at first. Their dog started reacting to the phenomenon. And they had a puppy and they named him Leroy. His name was Leroy. He was a boxer and a really great dog. I had him at my house a couple of times when they went on vacation. I took him here and didn't have anywhere to put him. So I said, yeah, I'll take him. You can come here. And great dog. Knew him for over a couple of years. And after, we started investigating with them and we started researching, excuse me, started researching the property, and we found out that this guy that lived there, his name was Bill. And he had a wife and a daughter and grandkids, and he had a brother too. And, we found out we actually got in touch with the grandchildren, and the grandchildren told us about Bill. Bill was a Marine. He was a real disciplinarian. He was a no joke kind of guy when it comes to, his house and how he liked things. And he was a military guy. And he was about 6 foot, big guy, not real big guy, but tall guy. And were telling us about him, and they were saying, when Bill was, toward the end of his life, that he had emphysema from smoking, and he was dying from lung cancer and emphysema. And that's the coffin that they were hearing. They were hearing that coffin in the house, and the present owners were hearing this, and that was Bill. I guess residual coughing, and or maybe it was still him coughing in the afterlife. I really don't know.
Yeah, I've been learning about that, the residual energy. I was talking to Victoria Osborne about this. The residual energy is not so much the entity itself, but it's an event that happened, right? So there's the energy of that event taking place, like whether it be a murder or they already died instantly, or even coughing. So yeah, that makes sense. That computes to me, right? Because that would be part of the routine of that event for that apparition.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, dying is a natural process. I mean, everybody's going to do it. Your body's designed to die.
Right.
It really is. If you think, I mean, you're born you're designed to be born, and you're designed to die.
Yeah,
it's just how it is.
Our cells start
designed for it.
Yeah, our cells begin to degenerate rapidly after birth, right? We start growing, we get new cells, those cells die off, and as you get older, you don't replenish them as much. However, there are some people out there that are figuring out ways with pharmacology where they might not reverse, but slow down the process of aging, right?
I've read that.
Yeah, humanity. It's what we do. How do we can you imagine if we were immortal, we didn't die, how populated this planet would be? We would not be able to sustain this planet. It would be impossible. We'd have to move.
You run out of food resources, water resources, everything would be gone.
Well, we'd consume the oxygen at such a rate that the carbon factor would grow.
Oh, yeah. There's no way.
So
it's kind of, oh, go ahead, sorry.
No, I was going to ask you for in the field for what you do, and you've been doing it way long. Well, you've been doing it way longer than me. Period. I've never done it. I've never been in the field. I only research. So in the field, when you're out there and you find a quote unquote hot spot, how do you approach that?
what I do is when I'm in the house, I I plug into the digital voice recorder and I just walk through the house or the location. And a lot of times you'll hear a voice, you'll hear voices, disembodied voice, not dis. Well, sometimes it's a disembodied voice, but through the recorder, you're able to hear on a different hertz level than you could normally with the naked ear. So
Right.
you're just walking through, and all of a sudden you might walk by a room and hear a voice say, "Hey," and no one else, you're like, "Whoa." Now, if I hear something like that, then I know I'm going to focus on that area. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to investigate because something paranormal just happened right there. So I'm going to focus on that area. I could go to another part and hear another voice somewhere, and I'll focus on that area for a while
Right.
until I figure out maybe this is a hot spot. Maybe this is a haunt of the house. Maybe that's a haunt of the house. You know what I mean? There's different places in the house, maybe where there's different spirits in the house. You never know.
Right. Yeah, there's another theory floating around that's haunted. So a hotel, for example, and I forget the name of it, but there's a hotel where there's a lot of spirits, and they're, from what the investigator says, they're not all from the same genre, right? They're not same era. So it makes me curious to know, can they observe one another, right? Like, let's say one guy dies in, let's say 1800 something, and then another guy dies there in 1950 something. Can they see one another, right? Because they're essentially in different loops of time that they don't comprehend. For us, it's 2000 and something, but for them, it's still 1950 something. And it would seem to me that they're preoccupied with their particular scenario. So I often wonder, can they see one another? Have you ever encountered that?
I've never encountered that, but it's possible. You know what I mean?
Right.
That there's different era of ghosts. I mean, I have kind of encountered that, but I don't know what era these ghosts were in. You know what I mean? But there was different ghosts in the house, but I don't know if they were from the same era or they were from different era. There was a lot of different, owners that occupied the house.
Yeah.
It's
got my curiosity. It really does.
Yeah. It's different. You know what I mean? Like, you're kind of trying to figure this stuff out, and a lot of times there's really you try to get an answer to it, and really there's none. You keep coming back to the same thing. All right, you went into a house, and a lot of the hauntings are all similar. You know what I mean? They're all similar to activity and seeing things and hearing things and seeing light anomalies and disembodied voices, door opening, footsteps. It's all the same phenomena.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I haven't seen anything that was really different in all the years I've been doing it. A different kind of haunting. They've all been kind of the same. You know what I mean? Like, all the activity has been genuinely the same. Footsteps, doors opening, closing, hearing disembodied voices, knocks on the windows, knocks on the doors. I mean,
it's not impossible. And I talked to, Victoria Osborne. I just spoke to her. I'll be putting her episode up soon. She enlightened me a little bit. Things I never really thought about. Like, if they're in a house and you see something go through a wall, perhaps once upon a time that house had a doorway there that is for them. Yeah. So for them, they perceive the house as what it was when they were there. They don't perceive it as, in fact, the idea that maybe they don't even perceive, they don't even really notice us, right? They're just going about their business. It's haunted because things are happening that's strange and abnormal, but they're just going through their routine, and it's abnormal to us. And to our flip side of the coin, we're investigating them, and when they do take notice of us, maybe we're haunting them, and that's why they're freaking out and things are getting knocked over, because they're in a panic, right? So it's a bizarre thing to think about. It's like the ancient Egyptians used to keep cats around to ward away evil spirits. And I always thought that to be funny because, when you hear about that, you're like, it's just myth. It's old. It's ancient bullshit. Until you read about some of the people in recent times who had paranormal encounters, and their cats react to it more than dogs. Cats react to it way more. I'm not sure why that is. I'm going to look into it. But it makes me wonder if the ancient Egyptians, you're talking about a race of people that were pretty advanced for their time. And a lot of lost knowledge. So maybe they knew something we don't. Makes me, maybe we should take cats on paranormal hunts, because from everything I read, they do react. They do notice, and they're not skittish either. 90% of the times, cats aren't reacting negatively to whatever is there. However, there are a few videos where something is interacting with a cat, and you can see in the video the cat's having a negative response to it. So,
the dog in that house had a negative response to something that we were filming one night.
Yeah,
it was really weird. You know, the dog started growling and barking at Don, and the dog, like I said, the dog was real familiar with us, not like we were strangers to him. And he looks up at Don, and Don's like, dude, it feels like there's something standing beside me. And the dog is looking right at it, and he's growling and he's barking, and he leaves the room. He goes out in the hallway and continues to growl and bark and doesn't want to come in the room. We had to coax him back into the room. You know, he was really, the dog was really not at ease at all. You know, he was hot. You could see he was, stressed, and it was really weird. And we all felt this kind of like static charge in the room, like a cold, staticky charge. It was really, really strange. One of the weirdest things I've experienced.
I'll ask you a question real quick.
Yeah.
Who's going to discover the facts of the paranormal first? Is it going to be humanity or is it going to be AI?
It's a good question.
Yeah, because AI, very analytical, and especially if AI becomes sentient, all right? Because what I'm learning now is that some scanners let's say when you go to the airport, there's artificial intelligence set up now to recognize faces, to recognize, I'm being told even to the DNA level, which I still don't comprehend. But there was an incident some time ago, and I read about this, where there was a facial recognition machine at an airport that was recognizing something that wasn't there, kept setting off alarms. And they said they were going to fix it. They replaced the machine, and it did it again. And then this is closely associated with hauntings in that place. So what I asked is,
the phenomenon.
Right. It's picking up something, right? Because a lot of the field investigators utilize these kind of sort of like facial recognition, something similar to it. It's the, what is that thing? The Xbox,
the
Connect.
The Connect, yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's a weaker version of what we have in airports and other public transit areas. So you take all this and you factor into what our military wants to do. We eventually want to have drones, whether it be air or land, that could both provide facial recognition and real-time scanning. So it could scan in infrared, it could scan in different light spectrums, it could pick up energies. And hypothetically speaking, if you have, let's say, a robot that's investigating a future crime scene, like a bomb, like a suspected bomb threat, and they deploy this machine, what if it detects something that's not there, right? And then what if it comes to the point where we're not explaining? Like, I hear this a lot. They think these are malfunctions. And because I watch a lot of tech stuff, and I really enjoy that stuff. And there's a lot of occasions where I hear them in the show saying, well, it's detecting something's not there. It's a malfunction in the data. But how do we know that? How do we know they're not they're perceiving something we can't perceive?
Yeah. Can't see these things, so maybe it is picking it up.
Right. Yeah, sophisticated scanners on it. I mean, you're talking in the infrared, different light spectrums. It's able to detect different energy levels, And when I say this, it sounds like it's a ghost-busting machine, but it's really there to perhaps detect radiation. It can detect an enemy in the field, or if there's a gas there that's harmful to humans. It's able to detect all these things. And one day, AI will get to the point where it's got to think in real time to save, like a building. There's a bomb in it. They send this robot in there. And it's got to detect all these different things. And what if it starts picking that up? And then that's what it turns to. What if AI becomes sentient, recognize when it does its own study on what these things are? For me, that's a wild imagination thing, but I always think that way because whatever we have as technology today, later on, the imaginary part becomes a reality. We've seen this in movies and TV and today's technology. There's a symbiotic relationship with science and fiction. There's a really big relationship there, like things we saw in Star Trek. Look at it today.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, made by Spielberg.
Right.
These guys are all famous movie producers, and they get a lot of inside information from people that worked in the government, scientists, and that really happened. Close Encounters of the Third Kind really happened. That movie was based off of stuff that really happened. And, Spielberg, got that information from a scientist. He didn't just pull that out of the air and make that movie. He got that information from a scientist. That really happened.
Yeah,
and
that's common with James Cameron too. They interview a lot of scientists and former military people to get an idea for a movie concept.
Yeah, that stuff really happened, and I think maybe AI may stumble onto an answer before we do, because we're not any closer to figuring this out than we were 50 years ago.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. And then you got AI that could basically calculate in real time 3 times faster than us. It could perceive things because of different scanning devices upon it. And
tired.
Yeah.
It doesn't get tired. It just does what it's supposed to do.
It's a real factor. It's a real factor.
Yeah. And it can do it 24 hours a day without being tired. Just keep moving on, and where we would wear out and get tired of watching video, get tired of listening to audio, and tired of video and things. And, these things never get tired. So
I get it. That's why I wonder how many, listen, every anomaly that is recorded in history, the government said, all right, here's an example. There was the Blue Project where government was investigating UFOs. And they were like, Blue Book. Yeah, and they basically did it to gain data and then dismiss it, right? Give some misinformation per se. And, we noticed to a certainty, because some of the people that used to work on a project later came out and said this is what they did. For many years, we disregarded and didn't even acknowledge that Area 51 was a real place. Later on, we find out in the 90s, it's real. And even in the 90s, when it was determined to be real, it wasn't until the 2000s when a president finally spoke about it. You know what I mean? And so then you look at how many programs are out there to investigate UFO/UAPs that existed that we didn't even know about. Whistleblowers brought it to our attention. So then you got to think about, if there's a paranormal phenomena taking place, is our government looking into that? I would think absolutely, because consider this. If one of our acronyms, one of our acronyms found real paranormal activity and they could find some way to communicate with it via a psychic or whatever means they could do, what better spy do you have? Think about that. We could just send an apparition to China or Russia. So
the government's been researching it for years. I mean, they just paid Bigelow, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, to go to Skinwalker Ranch. The government paid him $10 million.
Yeah, and he had to
investigate paranormal phenomena at Skinwalker Ranch, and he did it.
I think he sold.
I said, hell, they could have paid me $1 million. I would have did it for $1 million. You know what I mean?
I mean, if they give me the equipment and the resources, you could give me a few $100,000. I'm still going to go do it. It's because my interest is piqued. You know what I mean? So yeah,
for free.
I think science labs, prestige ones at that, are definitely looking into it. But because, again, the stigma of ghosts, it's it sounds like horse shit and kids. But the reality is, they're looking into it. They have to be. I mean, we know to a certainty that the CIA utilized remote viewers. We know that. They've been interviewed.
Have you ever seen a movie called Sir No Face? Have you ever seen that?
What is it called?
It's called Sir No Face.
No, I never heard of that.
It's a documentary by Chad Kallick. The Australian government paid these paranormal investigators to go on this island. It was called Cockatoo Island. And they paid these investigators to go out there and investigate these structures on the island. They were buildings, government buildings. And these guys experienced all kinds of paranormal phenomena. And they even captured what appeared to be a full-bodied apparition. And right after that, these people went to Chad Kallick, and this guy used to be on that Paranormal State and things like that. The TV show with Chip Coffey, he was on there with those guys. And I guess he became a producer. So he started producing this Sir No Face. Well, originally they thought it was a ghost. And then they started moving into maybe it's not a ghost, maybe it's an alien, or maybe visual intelligence. So when they started doing that, all of a sudden, these investigators were paid to go out on this island and investigate. They paid them. The Australian government paid them. When they started doing all this stuff with the documentaries, the government shut them down. They were no longer allowed to go on the island. I don't think they thought that they were going to capture any evidence the way they did.
Right.
And when they did and they blew it out to the public, now it became a problem. And these guys started having the men in black following them, coming to their house, asking them all kinds of really weird questions and shit. Really weird stuff, man. And you have to check it out. It's called Sir No Face, and the other one, they have a part 2 to it, and it's called The Gray or something like that.
The Gray.
And yeah, it's very interesting that they shut them down, and they were really advancing this to the public, and a couple people came forward about some other different things about they were already making these artificial intelligent beings, and that's what they think was out on that island, was one of these artificial intelligent beings, and they're producing them in Australia. They're already producing them in a plant in Australia. Someone from the government had stepped up and said, hey, they're already producing these things in Australia. And now these guys have been harassed by programmed people.
It creeps me out because that is beyond plausible. I'll tell you why. The idea of AI is not new. It's been around a long time, a very long time. And you keep hearing warnings from people like Elon Musk and other guys. And you have to agree with him at some point, because as crazy as it sounds, if AI, which is basically could be connected to the internet, which connects the entire planet, decides to be sentient, and they're like, well, these people are no good. They're killing each other. They have different ideologies. They don't get along over stupidity. Things like the color of their skin. They're not fit for life. That's what AI, because at the end of the day, if you think what AI is, it's basically going to look at things like what works, right? What works, what versus what doesn't work. They're very calculated. And people have this misconception that if AI ever took over, it's going to be like Terminator. Well, no, it's AI. They would shut us down. They'd put us in the Stone Age first, right? No power, no electricity. And if they really wanted to wipe us out, how many laboratories around the world have just dangerous viruses and bacteria that we experiment with? They could literally,
and everything else.
Yeah, they'd shut all of that down. This planet would be genocide in a moment's notice, right? Everyone would become sick and just die. Like the AI.
Look how it was in COVID. People were losing their minds, man.
Right. And so that being said, if AI really wanted to do damage, it's not going to be in the form of a machine going out hunting people. They could literally destroy us in every way see fit. Imagine the world right now with no internet, with no social media, with no streaming TV.
Yeah.
That's not even ending us, but the idea is you're taking away that luxury. How do we behave in a world with those luxuries removed? Be insane. We'd be crazy, because we depend. So I have a smartwatch on right now. This watch tells me how I sleep, what my heart rate is, when I need to rest. I mean, I become scary dependent on it. I check every day. Well, how did I sleep last night? What's my sleep score? What's my body battery? And you don't realize how dependent you are on this stupid watch. The watch even tells me when I need to have drinks. It's time to hydrate,
Hydrate, Cody,
It's the world we live in,
Crazy.
right? So then you take all of that, remove the AI, remove the technology, and then we're back to square one about life. And that's where the question comes. What happens post here, right? And now if you add AI to the factor, I think AI is going to discover real facts about what's here anyway. I can't speak to the other realms where energy goes, the source, but here on Earth, the anomalies here, I think they stumble on it, the better details than we do.
Yeah. I mean, the government, I heard the government, I read that the government was actually looking into like werewolves and these cryptid creatures, all that kind of stuff, man. So are these things coming through on another dimension?
Well,
possible.
You have to wonder how many of these cryptid creatures out there are the result of a government experiment. If you look in the 50s, Russia they wanted to make like a Superman, right? Like a mutated person that had greater strengths. And that experiment started with dogs. And there was these images that I was shocked to find out they were real. These dogs with muscles that were like, what the hell was that? Like crazy.
They had the head cut off, and they had the head cut off, and they were feeding it blood and oxygen and stuff. And that dog came back to life.
It's crazy. The Germans the Germans had the idea of introducing like a virus that reanimated people from they're mortally wounded. And then you take, and so you hear all this science shit that military messes around with. And you know how we're military. Everything we have that's remarkable will never be exposed right away. It's a black project. We're going to use it when we need it. You know, think about that hypersonic missile test by China. We didn't bat an eye at that. We didn't even blink at that. There, of course, the news like, oh my God, they have this, because that's the news. They're drama queens. But at the end of the day, you didn't see a major response from our military on the news. Say, well, we're going to look into it. We're going to develop this. They don't give a shit because they know we got something better. We've had it, you know. So a lot of these cryptid anomalies, are they the result of experiments like the chupacabra? You know, for a long time I thought that was horseshit until you started finding more and more of these coyotes with the hair missing and they were rabid. And they couldn't,
they have blue eyes and you know, it's weird.
And they couldn't explain it away.
Transformed.
Yeah, they couldn't explain it as something normal to nature. So I wonder, were these experiments? They release them out there to see what happens. You know?
Yeah,
it's what I
was kind of like Skinwalker Ranch with all these weird things they see out there with UFOs and cryptids, and it's really strange stuff.
There's definitely something. There's an abnormality to the geology of that place. With Skinwalker did, because they're just recently discovering there's flowing water beneath the surface, like a lot of it. And if you have flowing water and certain materials, like certain rocks and metals, you could create a magnetic field. And, you know, in a magnetic field, you could possibly alter a little bit of the physics, which would attract our observers, right? If we have UFOs and aliens and they're sophisticated, they see this like, well, that's interesting. Let's watch this. So that explains partly why they're there. They're there to observe because now they're seeing other anomalies like the apparitions and the alleged Bigfoots and some of the other things that are going on there. So they're going to observe that the same way we're observing that. And then when you have like Bigelow, who set his cameras up to observe what's going on there, well, now the observers that are observing us have to shut that down because it's ruining their project. So it's like a weird circle of shit, you know? Like I'm under the impression Bigelow was frustrated by that place. Put a lot of time and money in it.
That's why I sold it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got rid of it.
And the new guy that bought it was smart. He's like, you know what? I'm going to make some money on this place, man. We're going to make a show. I'm going to have some guy named Dragon on there who's my security guy who's
MIB.
Yeah. The guy Dragon.
MIB.
That guy is so unstable. You know, he's like so emotional.
Oh, yeah.
You get a true Navy SEAL out there and a team of SEALs to do protection. They're not going to display that same, you know, bat of horseshit this guy puts on. That guy Dragon really ruined the show for me. But outside of that, the one guy that's there, he's a geologist, and he wanted to dig, and I'm like, nope, it's too dangerous. Like, what? That's his job. Why'd you bring him there? You know? So it's the whole thing's bizarre to me, especially that place.
Yeah, I've investigated a couple of houses that are really bizarre. Actually, I'm still investigating them. You're going back and forth. And one was with a woman. We're still doing her house when I can, when she allows us. But she sent me a message last week that her and her daughter, and I think a friend, experienced weightlessness in the basement. They all three experienced weightlessness at the same time, like they were floating, but they weren't. It was really weird. Like it was. I said, maybe you were experiencing some slight levitation that you all three were experiencing at the same time. I can't really explain that. And we did have weird stuff happening there. We heard disembodied voices like right away in the house. We were hearing people talking, and we're like, "Who the hell's talking?" You know, and we're like, "Was there someone upstairs?" Or like, the owner's like, "No, there's no one upstairs." And we thought maybe it was Alexa. They had Alexa set up in the house, and we disarmed all that stuff. We unplugged it, and Carl was going out the front door, and he came back in. He goes, "What'd you say to me?" I was like, "What?" He goes, "What'd you say to me when I walked out?" I said, "I didn't say anything to you." He goes, "You hear a voice?" I said, "I heard you talking to somebody, but I didn't hear anything." He goes, "I thought." I was like, "I didn't say a word. I was setting up equipment." It's just that kind of weird stuff, you know.
Right.
And then in another case, we have is in like there's a house. It's built. It's a farmhouse, but it has a natural spring that runs through the basement. I mean, it's flowing water that runs through the basement. And when you go down in the basement, a lot of times you hear disembodied voices in the basement through this water. It's really weird. Now, I know sound travels on water, and I'm thinking maybe that these things can use the force of the water and make these sound waves, they can able to communicate better in the basement, because we definitely heard disembodied voices in the basement with this running spring water that runs right through the house. It's crazy.
Makes sense to me. I mean, yeah. I mean, if you think about like a whale song underwater that travels for miles with clarity, right? So yeah, I mean, maybe they don't even know that the water's there and they're making sounds, but they're realizing they're getting better responses down there. So that's where they primarily go. That would freak me out, by the way. Weightlessness, there's a couple things that would freak me out. If I lost control of my faculties or if I lost control of my physics. Like if something picks me up or I lose the ability to stand on my own 2 feet, that would freak me out.
Yeah.
That's because that's a form of...
That's never happened to me. Never.
Yeah, that would totally bother me.
I've been touched by things, poked, and felt like a hand touched me at one point. And in that case, the farmhouse case, the brother was attacked by something in the house. The weird thing is, it didn't start having activity in the house until the brother came in there with his girlfriend. And he said the girlfriend was talking this really crazy, weird stuff. And all of a sudden, they started hearing footsteps and stuff in the house. And the brother started hearing footsteps, and he came up and woke him up. And he's like, dude, there's footsteps like all over the place in the house. I'm hearing them downstairs. I'm hearing them upstairs. He goes, is that you guys? And he's like, no, we're in bed. The kids are in bed. Everyone's asleep. He goes, I'm hearing footsteps in the hallway upstairs, man. Like, it's freaking me out. So the older brother gets up, and they go downstairs, and sure enough, they hear, the footsteps coming up from the basement. And, the brother's like, there it is. Do you hear the footsteps? You hear it? So then they start trying to establish a communication with it, whatever it is. And it's answering questions to knocks. One knock for yes, 2 knocks for no. And, do you like me? Boom, yes. Do you like my brother? Boom, boom, no. Like it's saying it doesn't like his brother. So the brother starts freaking out. Like, he's totally freaking out, man. Like, he's never experienced any kind of paranormal phenomena. He's freaking out. He's like, dude, I want to get the hell out of here. So he goes to go to the front door and go out the front door, and something grabs him by the shoulder and spins him around 180 degrees back into the house. And dude, he was freaked out. He started crying. He runs out of the house, and they showed me pictures of where this thing had grabbed him. It left some pretty big marks on him, on his shoulder where it grabbed him, kind of like a hand that kind of came over his shoulder. And you know how someone grabs you really hard and it leaves like scratches almost, like it tore the skin up a little bit,
It makes me curious. The knocking gets a
why
response.
Him? Well,
yeah.
Yeah. The thing that gets me the most is, why him? Why didn't it do it to his brother? Why did it just do it to him?
Well, here's this other.
I've been in the house a couple times, and I've never had anything happen like physically to me. And I asked it to do things physically to me, and it didn't do anything.
I think it has something to do with software. I say this a lot on the show. I repeat it so many times. Psychics and other people have experienced. Some people they have the software that other people don't. This is exampled in sports. Some people can mentally go somewhere and perform beyond their physical ability because they mentally get there. Some psychics that are an example. I've used this person a lot. I'm never going to speak her name out of respect, but she's in South Florida, and she so far is one of the people. She takes no money. She does not advertise. She just helps these post-life entities move on by speaking to relatives or whatever it is. But to her, it's a burden, right? She sounds miserable. And so I have to believe that she has some form of software in her brain that allows her to do that other people can't. Some people are able to perceive things differently, period. And it's not just in paranormal ufology. It's in everything, right? Some people are just gifted golfers. Some people are just gifted artists. Some people were just born to be an architect. They have that data in their mind that gives them the edge over the other guy. 2 people go to school to become an architect, right? One guy, he studied hard. He knows everything there is to know about it. But the other guy's just flat out gifted. He just knows. It's of him. Like, same thing with musicians. Like, some people pick a guitar up. They spend their whole lives learning. They know all the fundamentals. They sound really good. But then this other guy picks it up, and he's like, you know what? I just know. I could just hear the notes and play it. And he goes on to become Slash. Some people in that realm with paranormal, they just have that software. And so I think if you're an apparition, I think they have some way of detecting that these people have that software, and they target them. I don't even mean to use the word target. They select them.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
I agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense to me in that sense. And I'm putting it that way anyway.
Said that for a while, that sometimes it's not the house, but it's an individual that sometimes creates the phenomena. It's not so much a location, it's the person it's this particular person that gets into that location, and maybe there is a little spark of something there, but then when that person gets into that location, now it's a like adding fire, adding fuel to that fire. Now it's an explosion of energy. Things are happening. There's a lot of because it's happened to me in the cases where, I took, for example, that case I was telling you about with the dog, with the Leroy and stuff. The wife, man, she joined my group for a while. She has small children, so she couldn't really do it a whole lot, but she joined my group for a while. But I noticed things about her that when we were in locations, activity was way more. Like, we'd be in a place and, man, we would have so much stuff happen. And she was kind of like a catalyst for the phenomena, and I'm like, whenever she's around, we have so much stuff happen. People get touched. We hear disembodied voices. We see light anomalies. Things are happening. It's insane. You know what I mean? We had been in locations, didn't really have a whole lot of things happen, but when she came with us, it was a whole new ball game. You know what I mean? Shit was happening all over the place, and we're like, it's got to be her. It's got to be her. You know what I mean? And at one point, we were in a tavern, and we were investigating. It was called the Frankenberger Tavern, and she's sitting at the table, and I'm looking at her, and she's looking at me, and her eyes look like I swear, they look like they were glowing, dude. I'm like, she had really blue eyes, and we're in the dark. And she's looking at me, and I'm looking at her, and I'm like, you're freaking me out a little bit. And she's like, why? I was like, because your eyes just look like they're glowing in the dark for some reason, and I'm not like superstitious or, the shit was weirding me out. I'm like, your eyes look like they're glowing in the dark. Like, I'm gonna leave, and I left. I just got up and left out. I'm like having some kind of weird moment. So I go outside, and she winds up getting touched by something in the tavern. We didn't experience any kind of like phenomenon like that, but she did. And I actually captured it on video, her being touched by something, and she freaks out, and I got to get out of here. She bounces out, but it's weird. I think it's some people that you get them in the right house, the right place.
Well, yeah,
man,
I mean, think about this.
What's going to happen?
Imagine you're an entity. Like, I firmly believe that most of the entities that are here on Earth they were killed by a gunshot, done over with real fast. They got to a car. When you die fast, there's like that ritual. I don't even want to use ritual. There's just like this thing that happens where, you hear people say they see their family and they're being greeted, they're being prepared for the transition. But when you're killed instantly, it's boom. There's no transition. There's no one to greet you. Like clearly it wasn't your time, right? And so they're kind of stuck here. Now imagine they're a lost, confused energy. They're like, what's going on? Where am I? What happened? Why can't anyone see me? I'm stuck here. And then you have this person walk into a house, and this person sees you, and you're like, holy shit, you can see me? You're going to stick to that person, right? Because that long-term feeling of being lost and alone, now there's a human being that could perceive you. You're going to follow that person around. I would, right? If I'm in this in-between state of life and the afterlife, and nowhere I go, they can't see me. Even if I'm knocking things around and getting attention, it's not the attention you really desire. It's a bit of frustration, which in some cases, I have to believe that ghosts that are knocking shit over, it's because they're aggravated. They can't be spoken to, or they're not being acknowledged. Then you have this person walk in, and this person can see you. You're going to follow that person. You're going to want to convey messages. Hey, talk to my family, or where am I? Can you help me? It's going to be harassment. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, some people that have that software, maybe it's not the house that's haunted. Now that person becomes, or even it's someone that doesn't. What if it's a person that doesn't even know they have this gift? They have the software. They don't understand it to be a gift. In fact, they're a corporate American person, or they work at the grocery store. But they want nothing to do with the paranormal, but the software's there, and it's recognized by entities, And this person is now calling for help because they're being harassed by these things. They don't realize they have the software. I mean, there's a lot of, in my mind, there's a lot of possibility for that. Like the little girl story, I think it was from the 70s. Little girl, she was being harassed, family moved them. The next house they went to was haunted. No matter where they went was haunted. I really firmly believe that little girl had a gift that she was unaware of, and they saw it. And so they followed her, and it seemed like harassment. So how do you explain to a ghost or an apparition that, hey, you're harassing me? They're not going to understand that. It's not that barrier between our world and where they are. Perhaps there's some sort of screen there that the communication isn't what and that we could use here, right? There's a different form of it. So I don't know. There's a lot of things to think about. And I really hope and pray science gets behind it. Because if anyone's going to figure out a way to communicate with the other side, it's going to be some scientist who's willing to experiment with the idea of how do we channel that? What hertz do we use? Perhaps maybe if it's a parallel existence, there's got to be something that we can do in physics to breach that. I mean, does that make sense, John?
A lot of people, you're asking when we're doing investigations, and, there's been a couple of places I've been in where there's some really there's intelligence behind it. It's not like it's just some residual kind of thing going on. We're asking questions and it's intelligently responding and answering the questions. Like in the case we did in Marietta, I asked questions to things and it responded to the questions and answered them intelligently. Carl was like, it was kind of slow. Things weren't really happening. And in that house, construction workers were experiencing high levels of paranormal phenomena. Actually, I don't know, Nella she wrote a book called The Unholy Structure, which is based on the case files of our case files, and she wrote a book on it. It's coming out, I think, next week, and it was about this house, and the construction workers were experiencing really high levels of paranormal phenomena as they were working. Like things would move, they were seeing things, they were smelling foul smells, seeing a dog, they were seeing a black German Shepherd in the house. They were seeing it inside the house, outside the house, seeing this big Amish guy. And, there was things in the house that was intelligently responding. It was a slow night. Carl's like, maybe we should turn the lights on to get some activity. And all of a sudden, we heard a disembodied voice say, not right now. It intelligently responded to what he said. He's like, maybe we should turn the lights on. And then all of a sudden, we hear a voice go, not right now. And we're like, whoa, what the hell? Did you hear that? And they're like, yeah, man, that was over there by you. I was like, I couldn't make out what it said, but when I put it on the software and I started listening to it, I was like, oh man, it's just like, not right now. It intelligently responded. And, there was a fire in the house. I didn't know there was a fire in the house. And I was up in the attic and I heard a disembodied voice say fire. It went fire. And I was like, what the hell was that? And I was by myself, and I'm like, I just heard a voice say fire. You hear me in the recorder. I'm like, right. That said fire. And I met the construction workers out there one day and I said, hey man, was there a fire here? And he goes, how the hell did you know that? I said, I know you guys are experiencing paranormal phenomena. I know that. He goes, yeah. He goes, a ghost said it in the attic. He goes, no way. I was like, yeah. I said, I heard a voice in the attic say fire. He goes, yeah, there was a fire here. We found smoke damage when we ripped the ceiling apart. And there was char marks on the rafters and stuff in here. And he's like, no.
It makes me wonder if you really think about it, there's a barrier, right? Between these two, there has to be a barrier between this world and the world they're existing in, whether it be between here or, the next
some
place.
Kind of parallel dimension to us,
right?
It's got to be.
So when they're speaking to you intelligently, they're basically verbing to you in single word or double word answers, right? What I would like,
or sometimes it's a sentence of stuff, yeah. And it even said it in German. We had, because the Amish are they speak broken German,
right?
So at one point, we're walking down the hallway, and I'm like, yeah, I sure like to see this big bald-headed. They said he was bald-headed and had a big beard. I said, I'd like to see this big bald-headed burly bastard they see in here, and all of a sudden on the recorder you hear a voice go, "House." And I was like, I didn't know what "house" meant. I was like, that's a word, but I have no idea what the hell that is. So I started looking online, and I'm like, oh my God, that says out in German. That means, and they speak broken German, and it says aus. And I'm like, whoa, dude, that's German. That's broken. That means out. They're like, they wanted us out, and
what frequent? So to ask you this spirit box, are you familiar with those, right? It's
in the Frank's box,
right? I mean, it makes me wonder. Maybe there's a certain frequency, like a different hertz, we could use to get more of dialogue in fluently, right?
I've used the ghost box and the old Frank's box and things like that. I've used them in cases, and I've captured some really intriguing stuff. I want to say I want to say it was paranormal because it was kind of coinciding with things that were going on in the house and answering questions and things like that. But I never presented it to a client as evidence because it's using radio stations. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's producing words from radio stations. So I want to give the client something genuine. So if I can't give them something that I actually heard or I actually seen, I kind of just count it off. I might let them hear it and say, look, this is what we call it on a ghost box, but is it paranormal? Maybe not. You know what I mean? Like, I can't prove it that it's paranormal. It's saying things, but is it really paranormal? You know what I mean?
There was a show or a movie. There was a movie and a show called Frequency. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And they were somehow communicating in different time parallels where they were speaking to one another from back in time, something with their frequency in it. That always caught my attention, that show. Like, what if we had a machine that could breach that barrier? Like some sort of technology that could breach the barrier between, and the question is, what is the barrier, right? That's the ultimate question. What are the apparitions? What are the ghosts? What existence are they existing in? And then once we figure that out, then we can figure out, well, how can we communicate with that existence? There's got to be a technology that could figure that out, right?
Yeah.
I mean, someone out there has got to put their brains together. Just because I'm not saying what we have out there doesn't work, but like you said earlier, we've been investigating this for, I don't know, years, decades, and we don't have this a real definitive answer or real tangible evidence. There's got to be someone out. Like, you think by now, it's 2022. You think we'd have a proton pack? I mean, that's just hopeful thinking on my behalf.
Something to capture ghosts, right?
Right, but something that could illuminate their existence. I kind of pondered the idea a long time ago. Like, what if you had like water mist and you had like light going through there? Because you could almost capture, if they're manipulating energy and there's like water in the air, mist, and there's light in it, and you take still images, you would imagine that the energy they're utilizing would manipulate that matter around them, and you could almost get a silhouette. Although that's hopeful thinking, that's me using my imagination again. But
you know what we've been trying to do was experimenting with a fog machine.
Right.
We start taking a fog machine and then putting ice to it to bring the fog down to like a waist high level, and then shoot lasers through the fog and see if we can see any kind of light or luminous objects through that fog through the laser light as well.
Right.
I mean, you got to try different things. You know what I mean? It's all about luck. We're going to stumble upon it somehow. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
But when is it going to happen? If you don't try, it's kind of like.
Well, the problem is there are probably programs, like said, government or military, where they were looking into this. Because again, if you somehow were to establish good dialogue with an entity that's not of this world or between planes, imagine the spy work that could do. You can go to any government in the world to tell you exactly what's going on in detail, and there's nothing they can do about it. So somewhere there's a program. However, there are no programs in, like, say, Harvard or MIT. These are the people that should, whoever, I promise this, MIT, Harvard, whoever discovers a way to breach the barrier and not only locate an entity, but establish dialogue via some technology, Nobel Peace Award instantly, guaranteed.
Pretty famous for the rest of your life.
100%. You're the whoever, man, woman, whoever makes that, you're it. You're the one. It's
kind of like killing Bigfoot. You know what I mean? You kill Bigfoot, now he's here. The news, you gotta get it before the government gets them. You know what I mean? You're going to have to get
of
it
course.
to the news.
You know, ironically,
If the government gets a hold of them, that's it.
Ironically, Bigfoot is actually afforded better laws than humans in some states. Yeah. Bigfoot's protected in some states. They're not even 100% sure it's real, and they gave it laws not to kill the thing. Yeah. You know, so
I think they did it in Canada. Actually,
there's people on this planet that don't even have those same luxuries. Humans in other countries don't have the same luxury as Bigfoot. It's crazy. So. But yeah, it's
kind of like the only way you're really going to get to the bottom of it is if you kill one. Unfortunately,
it is unfortunate to say that, but you're right, because you can't if they are as they are depicted, like 7 foot to 8 foot tall and like 300 to 600 pounds. You're not choking that thing out. You know what I mean? Maybe at best you could have a tranquilizer for a bear. You'd have to hit him with a few of those. Yeah, maybe that's the answer. Tranquilizers. Put a few of those in them. Yeah. Why are we not in the field with tranquilizers, looking for this thing actively? I don't know. That's what I would do.
Exactly.
I mean, I said this a lot in this podcast. Many years ago, there was I can't remember the name of the documentary. They were trying to locate a chipmunk in Canada that they thought was extinct, and they went on this big thing to find, and they found it. They found this little tiny creature. They found this thing. And there's an 8 foot tall, 600 to 700 pound creature running around. You're struggling? Stop. If that's the case, it's very intelligent, and it could avoid us at all costs, which, again, might not be impossible, because there is that case of the mountain gorillas that were around us a lot, and we didn't know about them until, I think it was like the 90s. And
it was in the 80s, I think, 89.
Yeah, and we'd been all through Africa for many, many decades prior to that, doing documentaries on animals for many years, and didn't know those things existed because they were intelligently hiding from us, right? They were avoiding us at all costs. Hence why they're mountain gorillas. They live in the brush where they can't be detected. So there's a lot of factors. But for me, the guy who invents the machine or comes with the technology or something that could breach the barrier and locate apparitions and somewhat communicate with more dialogue than we have today, Nobel Award, no doubt, 100%.
Yeah.
I look forward to that.
I mean, we do know these things they can use and manipulate energy. That's a fact,
right?
Because I've seen them turn, flickered lights, appear as lights and like these light anomalies and the static energy and that's the whole reason why your body gets the creepies when you're somewhere and your hair stands up on your arm and you get the goosebumps. Your body is having a natural reaction to a paranormal event.
Right,
it's changing the atmosphere right where you're at. That's why you're experiencing.
It's our fight or flight mechanism activating.
Yes, you are experiencing some kind of psychic thing that's going on, and your body's reacting to it physically. You're experiencing it.
Said that a lot too. I mean, for it to touch us or touch anything for that matter, they have to manipulate energy, and it's not going to feel good even if it's a good touch. I've said that 1,000 times. If they have to manipulate energy to touch you, it's not going to be pleasant. Period.
Is that it was cold when I got touched. It was cold, but it was gentle.
Right.
And the other time I got poked, it felt like someone took their thumb and poked me in the middle of it. It was pretty hard. It jumped me up out of the chair. But the first, it felt like a woman, like a woman's touch would touch you real soft on the shoulder, but it felt cold. And, what's weird is that all the people I've talked to that have experienced and seen ghosts or experienced ghosts, and I'll give you a prime example. We just did a case in Minersville, Pennsylvania, big mining town. It's right near where the fire's been burning for, 50 years underground. Centralia, Pennsylvania. It's a ghost town now, but the fire's still burning under the mines. It's been burning for 50 plus years, I think.
That's crazy.
But they live not far from there. Yeah, they live not far from there. And these two girls lived in this house their whole lives. They're sisters. And some of the stuff that they were telling me, the experiences that they were explaining to me, and I loved hearing their stories. The one daughter was sitting on the bed, and she said the room got really cold, and she woke up, and there was her grandmother at the end of the bed, standing by the window with another girl, a little girl, period clothing from the era of like early mining, 1800s, somewhere around there. And she said, Grandmom, if that's you, can you touch that picture that's on the dresser? And she said her grandmother looked down at the picture. That's automatic intelligence that she can understand. She's talking to her grandmother. Her grandmother understands her. She looks at the picture. She said when her grandmother looked at the picture, she got scared and she jumped up and ran out of the room and went and got her mother. And her mother, she said, Grandmom's in the room. She comes back and the grandmother's gone, but the picture's knocked over on the floor. So she understood what she was asking her. But then there was another event that happened in the same room. She wakes up again. The room's cold. Her grandfather is sitting. Her grandparents are dead. The grandfather's sitting on the bed, and he reaches out and he touches her on the face with his hand. He puts his hand on her face and he says, "Don't worry. Everything's going to be okay with the light." And she had no idea what he was talking about. She said, he sat back up. He said, "Everything's going to be okay with that light." And then he disappeared. But a week later, an electrician was in the house and he started, they were having some electrical issues and he pulled that light socket off and there was faulty wiring in there. And if she would have kept using that thing would have caught on fire inside the wall and it would have burned the house down with them in it.
Damn.
And that's amazing. That's foreseeing the future. I mean, it defies all things of what we think is logical. You know what I mean? Like you're talking to your dead grandparents, you know what I mean? And they're telling you things that are going to happen. They're understanding what you're asking them. You know, it defies all logical things that we think that are
when we say, you know I mean, when we're saying logic, we don't understand how time works in that realm, right? It could be moving forward or backward instantaneously, right? I always said to myself, if I die, would I be able to explore the universe and go see other planets? And I like learning. You know, I like learning new things. So it's guaranteed in my lifetime that we're not going to find another planet that has an abundance of life on it. Like we're going to find planets that are could be inhabited. We're going to find planets that hopefully we find a planet that's like Earth by a sun that has a moon equivalent to ours. Because if you consider what the moon is for us, if we didn't have our moon, it'd be chaos here. Life would be here, but it wouldn't be as pleasant as it is now. So if I pass, one of the things I would hope is that I would be able to travel around and to different locations and different times in space and learn about these other planets and life and etc. Now, we don't know what time is for them, right? Because it's more recently I'm discovering time doesn't apply to them the same way. So perhaps maybe they visualized what was going to happen in that house and they try to send a message.
Yeah, it's an interesting case. I can't wait to go back there. They have a church like right down the street, and I had a recorder in the attic, just a static recorder. There was no one in the attic, and the church bells go off. It's around 10 o'clock. And you hear the church bells go off. The last one goes off, and everything goes quiet. And all of a sudden, man, you hear a woman's voice go, "Amen." It says, "Amen." I'm like, there's no one in the attic. There's no one in the attic. And you hear a woman go, "Amen."
John, have you ever investigated by large power facilities like nuclear facilities or electric facilities?
Yes.
I would imagine because of the fields around that perhaps maybe that would be a hotspot, right? Because it's somewhat sort of, whether it be RF or whatever it is, something's got to be altering the physics nearer by that. Or maybe it's an attraction for energies. I don't know. I've always wondered that.
In some cases, the activity is really high. Like if you got like really like power lines and stuff.
Right.
Sometimes if the house runs, under the power line somewhere or near them, it's usually the activity is pretty high.
Yeah, it was rumored
really high.
When I was a kid here in Florida. There was a rumor because we had there's in Pinellas County, there's this large stretch of power lines that have a clear field underneath it that run for miles in all directions. Right. And there was a couple of kids, they told me that there was like ghost-like activity by these things. So I remember going there as a kid, sitting in I brought a hoagie sandwich and a big gulp. So I expected to be there a while, right? And I sat there till the sun came up. Nothing. I never saw anything. And again, it could just be me. Maybe I like the software. Maybe they don't like me. Who knows? But I remember hearing that story a lot as a kid, like right by the power lines where all this activity is. And I remember going there to no avail, man. I mean, so now I'm under the understanding if I do, and here's what I have to do when I go in the field. I need a team. I definitely need a psychic. I need people with experience in both paranormal and ufology, because I might not be able to perceive or not. Maybe I'm unaware of how I should be doing it, but I definitely need people that are in the know to come along. I would be disappointed if I spent a year in a road and found nothing. I'd be really upset. And I often think to myself, it's got to be me. I got to be the problem. Maybe.
I've never used a psychic ever. I just started experiencing things like right away. Not that I really believed in them at first. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I think there's a lot of fraudulent people saying they're psychic. You know what I mean? Like they use it to make money, and I think that's a total travesty when it comes to helping people. If you're in this to help people, how would you charge them money to do that? You know what I mean? Like,
there was that guy on TV. Remember him? He said he could. What the hell was that guy's name? He said he could speak to the dead. He was on TV. I remember after 9/11, I couldn't believe he did it. He was like, "Yeah, I'm going to communicate with the people now." I was shocked when he said that. Like, that was way too soon. I can't remember his name. I think it was John something. I can't think. He's like he was on TV. He was well known. People would call in, ask about, and I used to wonder as a kid, like, are these people calling in on his payroll? You know what I mean? Like, are certain people in the audience? Because he would, if you watch the program, because I never really watched paranormal shows growing up. I was always out. I was either shooting pool, hanging out with friends, out just doing stuff. I was never home, never watching TV. It wasn't until COVID came around where my interest for these things reignited, and that's mostly in part because the government released their videos on UFOs. And I'm like, wow. I mean, now we know UFOs are real. Now let's get to the meat of this. What's controlling them, right? So that's what rekindled my interest. But I remember watching that psychic, and I always thought, like, these people called in have to be on his payroll. He's never been wrong. Never been wrong, not even once. And the idea of someone never being wrong, especially with dealing with afterlife, it's got to be really unlikely, right? Someone's got to get it wrong, or someone's got to have a miss. And then people in the audience, he would select some certain people in the audience, and the way he engaged them, I always wonder, was he a fraud? And I'm going to look into that. I never really, in my opinion, that guy, to be on TV, to be that accurate, something's wrong. Something's off about that. And I just noticed
TV psychics like Teresa Caputo and all these different psychics, and not to tarnish their name or anything, but I just noticed that they lead people into giving them the answer. You know what I mean? Like, there's someone died from the throat. Now, if somebody is dead that's talking to you, why would that person not say, "Hey, my son-in-law is such and such, Bill Murray out there in the front row, I died from a heart attack." It's kind of, someone died from the throat or the chest. How many people do you know? I mean, millions of people's family members have died from throat cancer or a heart attack or choking or hanging or killed themselves. You know what I mean? It's kind of misleading.
It's funny too. Yeah, because the psychics they're like from the throat or something in their chest. Like, the terminology, man. You've been alive long enough to know what a heart attack is. You know what I mean? You could call it as that.
Exactly.
There was a guy in Vegas, and then I was in.
And the bad part is about it, Adam, is like these people are already emotionally distraught,
right?
So they're sitting there and they're waiting for this person, this psychic person, to say, "Oh, someone died from the chest," and maybe their husband or their wife just died from a heart attack. "Oh, that's me," and all of a sudden, oh yeah, he said, "Don't worry, he's okay." It's always the same shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
he's okay. He wants you to know you did everything for him. Of course, they want to hear that. Their loved one is gone.
Because no loved ones ever like, tell him I said he's an asshole.
yeah. You're a dick in life. You know what I mean? I don't even want to talk to you now that I'm dead. Like, come on, man.
There's that. Remember,
it's all about a gimmick. You
remember Sylvia Brown? She was on TV. I will never forget this. She was on TV. There was a girl that was missing for a decade, long time. And she told this mom, it's like, "Listen, she's passed on. I see your energy, blah, blah, blah. You need to move on. She has passed on." And then not even like 4 years later, this girl that was quote unquote dead was found in this man's house. He was holding her and several other girls captive. She was alive and well. And I'll never forget that, ever.
Yeah. She was a fraud right there. Boom.
Yeah.
Your credibility is you're done.
There was no harm in Sylvia Brown saying, look, I just don't know. I don't know. You know what? There's no harm. Some psychics that are real will say this, and these are the ones that get my attention. I just don't know. I'm not making a connection. I don't know what to tell you. You know, like I met a guy in, what year was that? I think it was 2010. We're in Las Vegas for 8 Ball Nationals, pool stuff. And there was a mentalist there by Caesar's Palace. This guy straight up said he's not a psychic, but the accuracy, he was calling even things with me. That lets you know he has the power of suggestion, because I caught midway through what he was doing. He was suggesting for me to give information. And when I realized what he was doing, I stopped. But when I was watching with other people, he's ridiculous accurate. And he said it, not a psychic. I'm a mentalist, which means I could visualize someone and pick apart what I need, the information I need to drive myself to a conclusion. And then you got to wonder how many people out there that are saying psychic and collecting money, and that's all the fuck they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you're getting money off of someone's grief. They're miserable. They lost their loved ones. They just want to see them again. And then you're giving them this false hope of you're talking to them. And,
right.
I think that shit is totally wrong in all aspects. And there's going to be a lot of people that listen to this and say, might get hurt feelings about it, but it is what it is. I'm not going to sit here and blow smoke up somebody's ass about it. That's just how I feel.
Yeah. For me, if I'm going to
think there are some people that are there are legitimate people that are psychic.
Oh, no doubt.
But there's a shit ton of them that aren't.
Right.
And are exploiting it and doing really stupid ass stuff. And it's, they should be ashamed of themselves.
I think some people definitely have the software to perceive or understand or communicate or foresee. I do think that. To one local psychic, I'm not going to say her name, but I was a kid. I want to say 12 years old when I heard this woman say, they're going to find water on the moon. And I was a kid like, that's horse shit. Space is frozen. There's nothing up there. The moon is desolate. We can see it through telescopes. Fast forward to, a couple of years ago, and we're discovering pockets on the moon with ice in it. And within that ice, when the sun touches it, there's a form of liquid water in the center of this ice. We now notice in science, and that hit me. I remember the day I learned that, because I watch a lot of documentaries, but the day I found that out, I was like, holy shit. How could you possibly see that from Earth and know that? Is either an amazing guess or that person was in the know. They could actually foresee these things. So some people have that software. They have that gift. But there's a lot of people out there, especially the ones that are on TV. And they're like, yeah, just call me. And before we talk, I'm going to need a deposit of X amount of dollars. And if I give you good information and we have further consults, it's going to be X amount of dollars. I mean, that's to me is, if you have this gift ordained by some greater power, why are you charging? And if you are charging, like there's some psychics out there, they only take donations. Like they do it very part-time. They legit only want people to come on to find closure, and that's it. But that guy on TV and Sylvia Brown on TV, I don't know, man. Do you remember back in the day, there was like numbers you could call for psychics? And I think it was like,
the psychic hotline.
Yeah,
the psychic hotline.
An outrageous amount of money. Yeah, like what was it?
Yeah.
Some crazy amount of money per minute to speak to these people.
Oh yeah, they were making a killing on it. People were actually like spending their whole paycheck talking to these phony psychics.
It's insane, man. It's crazy. And then meanwhile,
it's crazy.
And then you have these apparitions that are laughing at them.
It's almost as bad. I'm sorry. It's almost as bad as some of these people that are saying that they're demonologists and they're doing possessions and like. Dude, that shit is really rare, man. When you come across it, like I said, I've done it for a long time. I hate, saying beating the dead horse with it, but I have been doing it a long time, and I've never, ever seen a possession. Never. Not that I don't. I didn't think it was real for the longest time, but the more I keep reading stuff about it, and the more I keep reading, the more that I do see that it probably does exist.
I would say this. I think we need to phrase it differently, right? I think people, unfortunately, because of Hollywood, we think of possession to be someone this demon takes them over, and all of a sudden they're like turning colors and crazy shit like that. If you really, really read about historically and biblically what a demon is, it doesn't want to be detected. And so it's not going to possess the person. It's going to influence, right? So rather than using the word possession, they should be using the word influence, because a demon does, the minute a demon, and from what I read, when they become detected, like you become aware of them, they usually just, from what I read, leave. They just leave and wait for the opportunity to slip back into a weaker minded person. You know, they're influencing people to do things. This is only what I read, though. I've never, like you, I've never witnessed anything like that. But
I'm not an expert on it whatsoever. I've always wanted. I've investigated cases of claims of possession, but they weren't possessed. You know, kind of follow the guidelines of what the church would say. You know, in a possession, you know, you start doing religious provocation and holy water and, you know, signs of the cross and anointment oils and things like that. And, you know, you do this stuff to an individual that's allegedly possessed, and there's going to be some kind of supernatural phenomena behind you doing this. Right. And I never seen any of that. I just seen them, you know, acting goofy and cussing and spitting and, you know,
yeah, I mean, like,
but nothing supernatural occurred, you know.
I had spoken to some people that work in exorcism. One was an archbishop. I had him on the show. His stories were more consistent with negative energy rather than like what we see in Hollywood. Some of the ones I'd spoken to off podcast that won't come on a show, respectfully, I get why. They don't want the attention. But the one guy I spoke to said, typically when you see the influence of these entities with children specifically, it's easier because the example he used was a little girl who was using an amazing vocabulary, speaking well above her age. She was so the parents noticed a difference in her behavior. She was very relaxed, very calm. Her vocabulary seemed to be very impressive. And she wasn't being very courteous to fellow students. Like, she was being sarcastic and belittling. She would ridicule the teacher, almost to make fun of the teacher's lack of IQ per se. And makes sense. They took this little girl to a psychologist, and the psychologist says, there's really nothing wrong with her. She's quite intelligent, remarkable young lady, in fact. But her sarcasm and her nasty disposition, maybe it's something in adolescence, maybe it's chemical. So for years they couldn't figure it out until, and this family, by the way, they were I can't remember it. It's a Midwestern religion, organized religion. So they didn't really get around Catholics or anything. So long story short, eventually they reach out to someone, and someone that they reach out to says, this little girl might, you know, she might be possessed. And the mom dismissed this. Like, there's what she's acting out. Everyone said she's super smart. So long story short, they performed an exorcism, or he did. This guy's telling me this. He performed the exorcism. And the little girl was back to being a little girl. Almost like she was missing time, too. She couldn't comprehend where she was, what was going on. But it wasn't violent like you see in movies. It wasn't like he spent 2 weeks removing whatever entity was from her for her to become to herself again. Out of everything I've ever heard on off podcasts and interviews, even on podcast, I've never heard it put that way before. And it made me think, like, you know, there's a saying, the greatest thing the devil ever did was convince the world he didn't exist, made it easier for infiltration. So I would have to imagine if that's the greatest trick the devil ever performed, then a demon has to be somewhere just behind that. Let's not be detected. Let me take possession of this little girl, and I could just be in a human body, enjoy the taste, the smell, and the textures, and belittle everyone around me because they're beneath me. You know what I mean? Like, I could subscribe to that. However, I've yet to see, and if there is cases, and I'm not saying there aren't, but if there are cases of some girl who's levitating and her head spinning around, puking up, please show me. I want the evidence. I want to see the video on that. That's all I'm asking.
That's all I've said. That's all I've said over the years. You know, like if you know, somebody a couple people have been really pissed off at me about it, but I'm not doing it to piss anybody off. You know, and people get pissed off about stupid shit. You know, that's just how it is. And they'll think you're talking about them, or, you know, just it's totally absurd. And so that's all I've ever said is if there's proof, I want to see it. Right. That's being the whole part of being a paranormal investigator, is to experience the phenomena.
Right.
You know what I mean? I want to see a possession. I want to see a levitation. I want to see this possessed person speaking in different languages and being able to tell me something about my past that only I would know.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
That would fascinate all the shit out of me. I would be like, wow.
You know what I'm doing too, right, John?
Really
I'm buying a very specific metal item to keep in my pocket at all times. I'm going to start making it ritual that I carry this item. And eventually I've yet to speak to a psychic about me, right? So people are clear. Doing this podcast, this isn't for someone's entertainment. I'm basically speaking to guests, gathering information and data, because at the end of the day, I want to satisfy my curiosity. I want to go in the field and learn these things to help me understand. And the idea of the podcast for me is a conversation with myself and another person that people get to eavesdrop on, for me to see how I'm gathering information to go out there and look. So the idea is I'm going to carry this item on me in my pocket all times, not going to make anyone, not even people that are close to me, aware of what I'm carrying. And if one day I decide to speak to a psychic about myself, if they could tell me what that is, money's on. You know what I mean? Because I'm randomly buying this thing this week. It's funny we're having this conversation. I thought of this morning. Like, I'm going to buy an item that's different from everything that I could get my hands on and carry it. And I'm going to make it ritual. I carry it with me. And I'm not going to make anyone aware of it when I'm carrying, you know? So just because in this day and age with the internet, it's not that hard for someone to get online, look me up, find key topics to touch on to kind of spook me a bit, to make me like, oh, well, I'll give him this and it'll be believable. Maybe in the 80s you could get away with it and it would be real, but today with the internet, it's not possible. The footprint's too big. I have social media. I have a podcast. I'm not an introvert. I'm always out in public and hanging out with a group of people, so people know me. And it wouldn't take very much investigative work to learn what they need about me to present a good case. However, that one item, no one's going to know about it, and I'm going to keep it that way, you know? Not to be what that asshole disproves, but only because if I decide to go to a psychic about me, I really want it to be genuine. I really want to know it's real, and I really want to know the information being fed to me is genuine. So that's why I'm going to go that direction. It's not an aha moment. It's just a satisfactory moment for me.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm going to believe in a psychic, me and my wife went to a psychic when we were teenagers. And my wife was all into that shit. You know, I'm going to see a psychic. So there was a guy in this restaurant, this old Italian restaurant we used to go to. He was an old guy. And she was, I want to get my cards ready. He did cards, but they weren't tarot cards. They were just regular playing cards.
Right.
And I'm like, okay. So I'm sitting there, and he doesn't know that I'm with her. I'm sitting at another table adjacent to where he is. He's got a little booth, and I think he paid like $5 or something, and he's telling you, reading your card. So he's reading my wife with these playing cards. You know, he's just the regular playing cards. Boom, he's reading her. He says, there's going to be, I see a truck, a blue truck. It's going to lose the brakes. You better, whoever's driving the truck, you better tell them it's going to lose the brakes. And I'm sitting there listening to him. I owned a blue truck at the time.
Right.
And I'm like, but I didn't have the truck with me. I came with my in-laws. So they were my in-laws then, but I went to this restaurant with them. And I'm like, well, I have a blue truck. That's okay. So I'm listening more. And he's like, you have two brothers. How he knows this, I have no idea, but she had two brothers. She has two brothers. He says one is going to, one of them is really going to be addicted to drugs really bad. He's going to come out of it, but he's going to be addicted to drugs. No one's going to know it. It's kind of like a secret. And just a lot of things that he said after we left. I had sold the truck it was maybe like 2 months after that. I sold the truck. I sold it to my brother-in-law. And I'll be damned if 2 months later, the brakes didn't go out on that truck and almost killed him. And I was like, that's really weird. I said, that's exactly what that guy said when he was reading your cards. The brakes were going to go out, and they went out. And that can't be a coincidence. You know what I mean? It was weird as shit to me. I'm like, that's really weird.
Yeah, I mean, some things are just, some of them are out there. I mean, they exist, John. Some people have gifts. Yeah. And I say this, I always want to separate the paranormal. I want to separate, I probably said this 1,000 times on the show. There's a documentary on Netflix. It's called The Last Dance. It's about Michael Jordan and the 90s Bulls. And, despite what people think about Jordan, there's something I admired that he did. He was, one case he had food poisoning. He was really sick. It was during the playoffs, very sick. And he just, in his mind, went somewhere and just performed, not only just performed to do well, he outperformed the other team. Like, he went somewhere mentally. He would invent reasons in his mind to excel his abilities. That takes a special person to do that. Not everyone could do that. If I had food poisoning, no matter how badly I would want to win that game, I don't know that I could go to that mental level he went to perform that way. I don't know if I could do it. Some people have a gift.
That's why he's the greatest. Yeah, that's why he's the greatest.
Yeah, I mean, there's people out there that they literally make music, and it's beyond what you could comprehend as far as what they could understand as for hearing and tones. And so you see these people and you know they're special, right? So everyone on earth has some kind of software in their computer, their brain, that allows them to be great at something. And I undoubtedly believe some people can perceive and understand and communicate and definitely have a psychic ability. Unfortunately, more people recognize that there's an income from that, and they will tend to have a tendency to fabricate, to expand on it, to make money. And that's the truth.
Dead truth there.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, man. John, before we close, tell people about your podcast and other venues or other platforms that can find you.
If you guys want to listen to my podcast, you can come over to the Paranormal Journal podcast over on PodBean. You can catch me on Facebook. I'm on Facebook at Harrisburg Area Paranormal Society. You can go to my website, which is www.harrisburgareaparanormal.com. If you want to get in touch with me somewhere like that. That's pretty much it. That's well, I have Instagram and stuff like that, but I don't use it too tough.
Yeah, so I'll put all the links to that in the description so anyone can find it if they need it. In the meantime, I'm going to talk to John in post. So anyone listening, good night, good day, whatever it is for you, take care.
Hello.